Hello and welcome. Where it is -4 in London. Did I really say that? Yes, -4 where I am, and 28 degrees in Dubai, where our guest is surrounded by palm trees, swimming pools, suntan lotion, deserts, and I suspect they don't have strikes over there like we have here. But today's Goldster Inside Story is not necessarily about the Middle East, although we may go off on a tangent now and then. Our guest is a best-selling author of the modern thriller, a successor to Ian Fleming, Frederick Forsyth, John le Carré, and he is a humble man too, because he describes himself as a chauffeur and a butler, and he is in Dubai because of his high-achieving wife who got headhunted for a job there. And our highly talented guest can, of course, ply his trade anywhere in the world as long as he has ideas, a means to write them down, and that writer's pro and con discipline. We are about to hear about how a series character is created in Sophie Rancine, Aidan Snow, and Jack Tate. How does he come up with those names? Our guest also lived in Ukraine for many years before working for a multinational throughout Russia and the former Soviet Union. His high-flying wife, Galia, is Ukrainian, and he is currently writing a thriller based out of Donetsk, that war-torn region in eastern Ukraine, raising a question that I would like all of you to chip in on. Do readers now want to escape the headlines to somewhere completely different, or get behind the headlines to understand more? So put it in the chat. Let me know what you think. And on that pivotal note, welcome Alex Shaw to Goldster Inside Story.
Well, thank you very much, Humphrey. It's great to be here. I must firstly apologise. I do look a little bit sunburnt. I was on the beach literally 4 hours ago. I do apologise. I know it's cold back in the UK, but hey, that's life.
That's right. So you were on the bit. You've been driving through the desert. You've been on holiday or something. What's it like driving through the desert?
To be honest, the roads here are better than the roads in the UK.
Well, that's not asking much.
We've been away for a few days. We've been to another Emirate. It's called Ras Al Khaimah. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Okay. And yeah, it's about an hour and a half, an hour and 20 minutes drive north from here. So you go for Dubai, then for Sharjah, then Ras Al Khaimah, and it's fantastic. It's not very developed, but have some nice hotels on the beaches. And then behind them, you have the mountains. It's fantastic. Anyone who's followed me on Facebook will probably see the mountains. And they're just, stopping you from escaping over the border into Oman. But yeah, it's fantastic.
And you say you went to another emirate. Is that a little bit like going, say, from London to Buckinghamshire to Wiltshire to Cheshire or something? Is it what is an emirate exactly?
Well, yes. I mean, the Emirates, I suppose you would say they were like England, Scotland, and Wales, and the fact that they are separate countries. But in actual fact, they go together to make up the United Arab Emirates, much as England and Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland make up the United Kingdom. But each one's a bit different. But the oddest thing I find is that when you're traveling through them, because I've been to Abu Dhabi as well, there's no sign saying, "Welcome to Abu Dhabi." I have my camera poised. Okay, I'm going to take a picture.
And you're just in a bit like going through some of the European Union then, because often you can go from Belgium to France to Holland or something without any sign on the road there. But we mustn't get distracted, Alex, because this is a fascinating topic. Anybody wants any questions about the Emirates or the Middle East or something, Alex can, he's not a real Middle East expert, but he can, we can pitch in there. But the big question that I want to start with, Alex, is because you're a thriller writer and much has been said about art and the human condition. Is the thriller art, and how does it, if at all, contribute towards the human condition?
I think all writing is art. And I think that thrillers are uniquely placed to explore darker human emotions, darker human deeds, but to actually put them in a setting or in an environment where we can experience them almost firsthand, but without danger. I mean, we want to have characters we can believe in, characters we love, and we want to see nasty, naughty things done to them. And by the same token, we'd like to see them doing nasty, naughty things. And so in that respect, I think a thriller by someone who's, you know, top of the genre is just as good as, say, you know, a painting by, you know, Edvard Munch, or perhaps Picasso, you know, and I would say probably more accessible.
So is it, say, The Day of the Jackal or Casino Royale or The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, is that high art we're talking about?
I think you could call them high art, yes. I mean, obviously there's a bit of snobbery, isn't there? There's snobbery that says thrillers and crime fiction and other genre fiction, you know, isn't as arty, isn't as highbrow as, say, literary fiction. But I think that's nonsense. I think all fiction is literary. I mean, it's been written, it's gone through literary agents, it's gone to publishing houses, the majority of it. So it's all literary, my point of view, you know. And I think it's down to the individual reader to find the value in what they're reading.
And on that, I just wanted to ask our wonderful audience, if there's a book, it doesn't really matter what it is, but let's say a sort of, you know, an adventure story or a romance or a drama that you read maybe when you were much younger, and that it taught you something that you didn't know about a topic, changed your life, changed your view on Africa, on love, on marriage, and Pauline Blasey has said, we all need to engage and change this appalling atrophy in this country. She's meaning here, not your country, Alex. The strikers are engaged and we need to support them. Any book that you read on that sort of might have taught you more about labor unions, strikes, capitalism, anything like that, fiction book that is, put it in the chat and Alex and I will discuss it and you can discuss it with us. My one, and I ask you this now, Alex, my one was when I was a kid, I read Leon Uris's Exodus, which was about a fictional account about the creation of Israel, but with the real live characters in there. And I thought, why on earth am I not being taught this at school? And that drew me into into devouring these sort of adventure stories that took me behind the scenes. What one was yours, Alex?
Well, one I can really remember is called I Am David, and I think it was, I'm trying to remember, it's by Jan Holm or Anne Holm. I'm a bit fuzzy on who wrote it, but I read that when I was, I don't know, perhaps about 11 or something. And I think what really drew me in was it was about, I think, a boy who escapes a concentration camp going to try and find his mother. And because it was so personalized, you know, it's his story, and it was set in, you know, World War II, something that apparently I knew a lot about because I'd seen, you know, lots of films and TV, etc. And obviously studying at school. Mm. This was a new insight into that. It made it more personal to me, you know, because you can say, oh, X number of million of people died here and died there, etc. But if they're just numbers, if you learn about them as people and get to kind of feel empathy for them, then you can learn an awful lot more. I think that's what fiction does, isn't it? I think fiction is a scalpel that kind of cuts through the kind of the headlines to focus on the individual being. And I think that's what we all kind of try to aspire as both readers and writers, is to kind of see these characters and really, you know, believe in them and love them.
Yes, and to take you inside places, situations, and worlds like the spy world or the security world or the some sort of dramatic world, and that. Anybody's got any thoughts on that? Let us know. Thank you, Pauline. What is your? I Am David is read a lot in school now, says Sue Tony. So maybe you were pivotal, Alex, in projecting it into the curriculum, the canon.
Ahead of the curve, yeah. Well, it wasn't. I can't remember if we read it at school. I mean, I certainly read it when I was at school, but I'm glad it is read now. You know, I can't remember any of my friends having read it. But I know for many years it was that's it, Anne Holm, that was it. I know I read it for many years. It was one of my favorite books, and it's, you know, I still think about it now, you know, occasionally.
I think that's the point, isn't it? When you keep thinking about a book. I mean, there are the famous ones like 1984 and you know, Christmas Carol from Dickens and that, but there are books that we each individually have that knock around in our minds. Monique says, Anne Holm. I have to say that was my least favorite book at school. Maybe I didn't like it because we had to take turns reading it around the class instead of being able to get on and read it myself. What a good point, Anne. Sorry, what a good point, Monique. Do you know that book, Alex?
Well, yes. I mean, we didn't. I think that's going back to I'm David, isn't it? Again, I mean, I don't think we read that one around the class, but I always used to find that you always had a few children that loved to read but didn't like to be very vocal. You know, they used to be called wallpaper children in teaching terms, because basically they were very clever. They did the work, but they didn't like to have any focus on them. So they just sat there like wallpaper. You know, you kind of forgot they were in the room. And I think sometimes when you're reading out loud in the class, obviously it brings them out. But then, you know, reading and reading out loud are two different types of
yes, they are, aren't they? Yeah.
Things, aren't they? You know.
Yes.
But yeah.
I guess like any experience, it's much more acute if you experience it yourself. Whereas if you're in a tour group, you know, going to St. Paul's Cathedral or something, it's a different experience. I was listening to Stig Abel, who I think is the literary editor of London Review of Books or something, and he was saying he suffered from acute anxiety as a teenager and going into his 20s. But if he read a thriller or a crime book that had resolution at the end, like the good guys won and the bad guys lost, he felt that was very settling. Do you agree with that?
I think yes. I mean, we do. We always want the baddies to win, don't we? Sorry, the baddies to lose. That's
the baddies to lose. I think yes. Yes.
Yeah, because I'm thinking myself, wouldn't it be nice to write a bit of crime fiction or thriller where the baddies win for a change? But of course, you know, whether it would be sold, you know, I don't know. But yeah, I think we do read for therapy. I think it transports us away from who we are and where we are. It's almost like it's repairing us, isn't it? And to a certain extent, it's educating as well. You know, there might be vocabulary in there you don't know. There might be places there you haven't been, etc. Or definitely emotions you haven't experienced. And I think all of this can be very therapeutic. But yeah, I mean, you know, there is a formula. I mean, James Bond, at the end, he's alive. Jack Reacher, I'm sorry, I'm not spoiling this. At the end, he's alive.
He's alive.
You know,
yeah, but then there is the case where the baddie often gets away to play for another series. So you can think that he should be dead, but actually no, he's still alive and he reappears, doesn't he? People like, did Odd Job reappear a few times? And
I think it did. And my personal favourite, and my personal favourite, Jaws, he came back as well with his metal teeth.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
He's going through the airport and he bleeps and they look at him and he just does that and he's got the metal teeth. That was one of my favourite scenes in Bond.
Yeah. Now, I mean, Bond, we sort of laugh and joke and glamorous and everything, but it was written against the backdrop of a very serious situation, which was the Cold War, essentially. And I remember growing up expecting nuclear missiles to strike us at 10 minutes notice or something like that. You are currently writing about Ukraine, about the area of Ukraine and Eastern Ukraine that, you know, is a war zone at the moment. How are you going about that? And how are you molding your story in order to attract the maximum number of readers?
What I do find quite difficult is trying to be 100% contemporary, because obviously things are changing the whole time. And so I have a book I wrote a couple of years ago called Traitors that was set partly in Donetsk. Now, I've been to Donetsk. I haven't been there for about 18 years now. But yes, it's partly set in Donetsk, that one. And that was what I took a kind of amalgamation of factual events that had happened and kind of put them together and kind of cherry picked to get a kind of general theme. What I'm writing now, I have two different ideas. And one is a thriller that partly takes place in there again. And so again, I'm trying to think, okay, you know, I can't set it now. So I want to set it perhaps in 2 years' time. So I can kind of feel okay, 3 years' time. I can feel okay, well, I think Ukraine's going to win. And so it's looking back on what's happened. And so there'll be scenes that are flashbacks. And the flashbacks will probably use historical documents, etc., to make them feel authentic, etc. And so both books I'm writing currently have that in them. And one is a thriller, and one is crime fiction. But both involve Ukrainian characters.
All right, now you've got to tell us the difference in a few words between a thriller and crime fiction, please.
I think crime fiction kind of, yeah, well, they can be both. I think crime fiction normally focuses more on a police officer or a detective, or an individual crime, as opposed to a thriller, in my kind of point of view, where I write espionage or international spy thrillers, where it's official bodies going after another official body or something, or where there's very much like a hero going through, as opposed to somebody being backed up by a police department, etc. I mean, that's just my point of view. But I mean, they both do interconnect.
The publishers look at their lists, don't they, and they put them in the list. So if your crime fiction is full, could it go into thriller, and vice versa?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Townley makes a great point here. The early Frederick Forsyth thrillers introduced me to a completely different style of writing, which I did enjoy. I think, Sue, you're talking about The Day of the Jackal there, which I remember my parents devouring hugely. Explain, and you are familiar with Frederick Forsyth, I know, Alex. Explain to us how he broke new ground in thriller writing.
I think it was how they what he wrote, and some other masters of the genre. They actually were able to use part fact and intertwine that with a fiction, and they were able to make it accessible to the man on the street, and have a kind of wealth of characters there that were exciting, people you could root for. Because I think if we go back, I think fiction gets a bit kind of dry if we go back too far. I'm not talking about crime fiction here. I'm talking more about thrillers, etc. They can get a bit dry, and I think we try to make it more accessible. And I think things like The Day of the Jackal, I think they pumped up the adrenaline, a lot more than other authors at the same time did. I mean, I'm thinking about Wilbur Smith as well, etc. They all had great locations as well as great characters.
Yeah, you're talking about Wilbur Smith. I'm going to go off at a tangent for a moment, because you were shortlisted for a Wilbur Smith Award, weren't you? Tell us about that.
I was, yes. I almost fell off my chair when I was longlisted, and I did fall off my chair when I was shortlisted, which was quite odd, as I was sitting in my car at the time. I had to grab hold of the door. Yes, I was shortlisted for the Wilbur Smith Adventure Writing Award Best Published Novel, and this was for Total Blackout, which, as luck would have it, I have a copy here. That's my first Jack Tate thriller, Total Blackout.
That was the electromagnetic pulse attack on the States, was it? And everything blacked out.
That's correct. Yes. Yeah. And so, yeah, I got that. I was shortlisted, and there was myself and 5 others. And I didn't win. I didn't think I would, but it was lovely to get that far and to kind of
fantastic
feel like a real writer,
I want to go back. I want to go to lots of. I want to go back to the Frederick Forsyth theme that Sue introduced us to just now, because I remember reading that and then thinking that I would know how to fake a new passport. I would know how to build a gun. I would know how to and all that. And it did break through. But you were talking about your Ukraine writing, about getting the contemporary, getting the timing right. In Day of the Jackal, he actually went back, didn't he, to the attempted assassination of Charles de Gaulle, which we all knew didn't happen, but we didn't know right up until that point that it didn't happen. Is that something you could do in Ukraine, or is that an effective way of doing a thriller?
I have done something similar. I mean, I have got information about events and plots that were stopped, and I have incorporated some of that into my writing. But I think we need to make the writing, the thrillers, the plot as realistic as possible. And I think if you can take something that almost happened and write about it, I think that's fantastic. What I don't want to do is kind of rewrite history, because that's that doesn't help anyone, you know. I mean, I know there are books that do alternative history, like What If Germany defeated the Allies in World War II, etc., and they're fantastic. They have their place. Well, that's not what I'm trying to do, you know. But yeah, any plot device that gets the reader engaged is great as far as I'm concerned.
And do you have a good Russian in your Ukraine writing?
I normally do. I mean, you know, my point of view has always been that my characters, and well, myself and by extension my characters, we're not anti-Russian. We're anti-Putin. We're anti-Kremlin. We're anti-warmongers, the people that are running the country at the moment. You know, I mean, where I've been for the past few days, and especially in Dubai actually as well, there are an awful lot of Russians who are now here. And I think about 5,000 Russian millionaires have left and come to Dubai, which has put everybody's rent up.
5 million. Goodness.
Yeah, 5,000 millionaires.
Oh, 5,000 millionaires.
5,000 millionaires.
Yeah,
I saw a table. One of the broadsheets published a graph. Yeah, so 5,000 millionaires have come to Dubai. Obviously, more than 5,000 Russians are here, but 5,000 of them have lots of money. So yeah, so 5,000 have come here. But yeah, I mean, you know, I don't, as I said, I don't hate Russians per se. I don't hate anyone per se. It's the government, you know, it's the government that's kind of pushing this.
Because I remember the various Nazi books. You occasionally get the good German or the good Nazi in there, don't you? That's trying to make things right, but can't against the whole system. I want to take us back to Ukraine now and your personal life and your youth, because you lived there for some years. What were you doing?
In my youth, well, they say that if you can remember your youth, it wasn't that good, don't they? I went to Ukraine in 1996. I went over there to start a language school, and on my first day in the country, I met my wife.
First day.
First day, yeah. I arrived on a Sunday. Monday morning, I went to the office of the company who was starting the school, and we were taking tests from various students, and I met my wife there. And her English was too good, so I didn't actually get a chance to teach her. And so I saw her 2 weeks later, when suddenly there were people that spoke English as well as she did that were going to have, you know, extra lessons, like idioms and things. And by that time, a friend of mine had arrived from the UK, and so he was teaching her class. And yeah, so we things happened. Obviously, you know, we became attached.
When you met your wife, the day after you arrived, you met your wife. Did you get that thrum that said, "This is the one"?
I did, yes. And at the time, I was trying to be very cool. I was trying to hold my stomach in and hide my double chin. I was thinning, obviously, a little bit, and I was trying to look suave, you know, and. So
and it worked?
Didn't work. So yes, I was trying to.
Did you have to woo her and fight off other suitors?
A little bit, perhaps. I mean, but you know, that was 1996. You know, we got married 7 years later and been together ever since. So you know, it's.
What was it described to me what Ukraine was like then. 96 is many years ago, but could you have ever imagined what's happening now when you were, you know, in Ukraine then?
Well, this is the odd thing, you see. Before I went over, I didn't know much about Ukraine at all, and I read a little bit, and I read a bit somewhere. Somebody was saying that the Russians were going to retake the Russian Black Sea Fleet. The Black Sea Fleet, Russia were going to come down and take it. And someone told that to me, and I read about it, extra bits as well. And this was 1996. I thought, oh, okay, well, that's never going to happen. Fast forward now, and obviously, you know, they had a big agreement to use the base, you know, in the Crimea, and then they took the Crimea in 2014. But no, back then it still looked like the Soviet Union. It still felt like the Soviet Union. I mean, I remember when McDonald's arrived, it was an exciting time.
Yeah.
I mean, in Moscow, people got dressed up in suits and things, and or dinner jackets, like they were going to the opera to go to McDonald's. It wasn't quite that crazy in Ukraine, but it was exciting that the Western companies were coming. Because before that, I went to a kiosk and I asked for a hamburger, and it was a piece of ham microwaved in a roll with a piece of like instant cheese, and that was a hamburger.
Yes.
Yeah, but it was a fantastic place.
Yeah, I mean it is, and it is this sort of grain basket of Britain, and they've got the huge, the Second World War monuments there and everything like that. So there is this sort of crisscross of stuff. But then you went from there. You got a job with Siemens, didn't it, selling technology or something? What was that?
Yes, well, I was, as I said, I was teaching in Ukraine, and then I started my own company, and then after that, I got headhunted to come back to the UK to work with Siemens. And I was selling hearing aids internationally for Siemens, which is a very exciting job to do. There's that joke. I sell hearing aids. What? And I learned that in about 6 different languages. Every time I went to a new hotel or something, and I was checking in, and they said it in their own language. I haven't heard that. That's funny. I'll remember that. Yeah. So yes, but that kind of took me to various countries, the Middle East. I was in charge of business development in the Middle East and North Africa, and also the former Soviet Union. So
it's a huge area.
It was, yes. I mean, it probably sounds more glamorous than it is, but the whole time I was traveling and going to these various countries that I hadn't been to before, I was very lucky. I was kind of making mental notes. And so my first book that I started to write when I was living in Ukraine, I started to add bits to that, and then more I suppose my second book. A lot of the action in my second book takes place in countries I've been to whilst I was working for Siemens.
Tell us your first book. Tell us how those ideas came through your head and how you managed to sit down and write it and get it published. Give us a nutshell of that.
Yeah, people ask me how long my first book took to write, and it was 12 years because I was lazy. It was a hobby. I think in this current day and age, people think, okay, I'm going to write a book, bang, it's going to be published. And I didn't even know if I could write a book. I'd studied script writing at university and, writing for television and stage university and for radio. But I thought, okay, can I write a book? And I had an idea, of like an ex-SAS character based in Ukraine. So I kind of used a lot of my own kind of information there. He was based on me if I'd been in the SAS. So he lived in my flat, and he taught at the school I taught at, and he came from the same place I came from in the UK. It was also, like myself, tall, dark, and handsome. Well, that's by the by. So yes, I started to put as much as I could about myself into the book, and things that I kind of knew, because I thought, I'm not an expert on the SAS or being a spy, but as I live here, I suppose I'm an expert on Ukraine. So that's what I kind of used to fill in the gaps.
So you mentioned that your flat and he looks as handsome as you and everything like that. So why did you not make him a hearing aid salesman, a bit like Graham Greene's our man in Havana who sold vacuum cleaners?
Well, hearing aids were mentioned in the first book, and but not by him though. There was someone who was assassinated, was the MD of a hearing aid company.
Oh, goodness.
And it was actually somebody who was an MD of a hearing aid company that I worked for after Siemens. So that person got assassinated. And then the second book, I went to Saudi Arabia in that, and also the UAE, and so a lot of my experiences in that one too. And I think I mentioned hearing aids in there as well.
Oh, okay. So you couldn't.
This is going back 10 years now. My new books don't mention hearing aids at all.
So you've managed to wean yourself off hearing aids, but I have a tangential question that's got something but nothing really to do with our conversation, but that's what a Goldster conversation is like. Another scandal, the intriguing story about American diplomats being beamed with some sort of sound in the Cuban embassy and elsewhere that gives them psychological problems. You know the one I mean?
I heard
Could you
that,
do
yeah.
that with a hearing aid? Could you implant a hearing aid with that sort of thing to send wild messages to somebody's head?
You could probably find a frequency that would send some kind of pitch that person might be able to hear. I suppose. I mean, if you were an audiologist and you'd taken the reading of the person's ear, then you might be able to set it specifically, to them with the kind of tuners and things you have. But I do know there was something similar to that. I don't know. I did read once about Uri Geller. He claimed he worked with the CIA, and he claimed that during the 70s, or was it the 80s, he was on a plane going for Washington to Moscow, and he claimed he was sitting there kind of thinking about the Russian diplomat several rows back, trying to give him a headache or something.
We're going way off track now. Now I want to be very disciplined about our conversation in the next few minutes.
Right, sensible.
The name of your first book?
It's called Cold Blood.
Cold Blood is. I think we've got that up on the. I'll put that in a minute. So what I want you to do is, you've got 3 character series, one that's just started and the other 2, and you talk to us a bit about starting up the series and the types of characters. How do you come up with them? How do you bang away? Why is this person original? Why is he more interesting than any of the heroes out there in a crowded field?
That's something that I have been asked before, and it's something that I've struggled to answer, really. I mean, I think what would interest me, what do I know that I want to kind of explain? What have I experienced that perhaps has been a little bit different, and I can put in the eyes of I could put in the reader's mind, but I can get them to see this without preaching. For example, each of my characters are different.
Well, explain them to us. Give me a nutshell profile of Aidan Snow, Cold Blood.
Okay, well, yeah, Aidan Snow was a member of the SAS. He became invalided out because he was involved in a car crash whilst he was on an operation in Poland. And then 10 years later, we see him in the book Cold Blood. But he's a bit unusual, as he was an embassy brat. He's the son of British diplomats, and so he grew up bouncing from embassy to embassy, and hence he was in the former Soviet Union, is in Russia. So hence he speaks Russian. He sounds like he's in Moscow because he had teachers over there. He's named Aidan because his father was a diplomat in Aden, so he's named Aidan. Obviously, spelling's a bit different, but, yeah. So there's that.
And why should we love him?
Sorry.
Why should we love him?
I think because he's kind of very honest. I think he has a moral compass. I don't think he has a bad bone in his body. I don't think he's ever trying to do anything that's kind of outrageous. I think he is, deep down, he's his wholesome character, but he knows how to kill. He hasn't got the kind of the Lothario side, that James Bond has.
And how is Aidan Snow different to Jack Tate, who does Total Control and Total Blackout?
Well, Jack Tate's a rougher.
A rapper?
No, rougher. Sorry, no, it's not a rapper.
A ruffian. Okay.
Yeah. No, it's not gonna do the rapping business. No, he's rougher. I mean, he comes from he was a foster child. So he has someone who calls his brother, who's actually the son of his foster parents. So we don't learn much about his parents. We may in the future, but at the moment we don't know much about his parents. And he's kind of he's like Aidan Snow, but not as polished. I mean, his skills are just the same. But whereas Aidan Snow could have chosen to become an officer because his parents are trying to push him to go to university. Jack Tate's the guy who left school as soon as he could and went straight to join the army. But fundamentally, deep down, they're probably very similar characters. As obviously, anybody who can join the SAS has to be a certain type. Has to be able to.
And they're both ex-SAS, are they?
Yes, I mean Jack Tate's still a serving member of the SAS. He's on secondment to MI6, or the Secret Intelligence Service. They've got a group called E Squadron, which is a covert action group. So he's on secondment to that. So he's technically still serving with the SAS, whereas Aidan Snow is MI6.
And why should we love Jack Tate?
Because I think he's brutally honest. He's a bit explosive. I don't think you always know what he's going to do or what's going to happen. He's also got quite a kind of childish love of American wrestling as well. So occasionally in a fight, he'll throw an odd American wrestling move in, or an insult. He'll something do like a Ric Flair and knock someone's knee sideways or something.
Okay.
And so he's. His sense of humor, I think, is a kind of a bit more crazy. But he's.
No, I'm going to ask this question after we've done Traitors, and so I've got Traitors here, and it has a wonderful line: "You never know who you can trust, but I trust everybody, including you, Alex."
Thank you.
Now, this is a female heroine. Or
it is,
hero
yes, it is.
Yes, Sophie Rancine. Tell us about her.
She is the daughter of a former French foreign legionnaire, and she works for the French security forces. She works for the Division Action, which is their direct action group. She is somebody who was overweight as a child and then managed to get herself fit. And so she was always kind of fighting bullies and things. And her father taught her to fight, whilst her mother, who was a baker, was trying to kind of feed her cakes. And so she's always had, it sounds a bit petty, but it's not. She's always had this kind of this fight within her. Should she be like her father or like her mother? And yet her mother's gone missing. Either ran off when she was young, leaving her with her father. And she's meant to be a human resources consultant, when in actual fact she's an international trained assassin working for the French.
Right. The French do have trained assassins, do they, that go around killing bad people?
I could tell you, but I'd have to find out where you live and ask you not to repeat it.
And you've given us great descriptions of these three characters in your series. And when you sort of imagine it, Jack Tate's foster child, Aidan Snow's this, say, do you plan all this in advance? Do you write it all down and then feed it in, or does it come to you as you're writing? Oh my God, who are their parents?
A bit of both, really. I think Aidan Snow was a lot more inside my head because I think I was writing a kind of romanticized version of myself. Jack Tate, I had to think about how to make him different, who he was, and what made him tick. He's ever so slightly, he's based on a friend of mine, a Welsh guy who I met at drama school, who actually used to be in the French Foreign Legion himself, who lived in North Wales. And there's an instance if anyone's read the book, there's an instance he refers to with stolen fireworks, and that's my friend's story. So I put it there as a kind of homage to my friend there. But I had to try to think a bit more, especially Sophie Racine was interesting, because I made her the most conflicted. That was kind of the most enjoyable to read and also to write, I think, as well, because for me, I really got to kind of know who she was. I got to kind of really see what made her tick, because I had to think more, because obviously I'm not genetically female, and so I had to kind of think, okay, how does she tick? What would she do in this situation? I know what a man would do. What would a woman do? But then what would a trained woman do? I.e., someone trained in intelligence and violence and whatever, what would they do in this situation? How is that different to, for example, a normal man or woman on the street? And so for that, I had to really dig deep, and I found that really interesting.
Yeah. Is it different? Do men and women think differently?
Well, that's a question that I'm sure our viewers could answer better than I can.
Oh, let's see if anybody, Sue Townley, does anybody have I'm just reading your name, Sue, there. Monique, anybody got a view on that at all? Because it is a question when you're writing these different characters, and they also have this cancelling thing now, don't they? That you can't write about a character that you do. What's that called? Appropriation or something?
I tell you, Humphrey, it's crazy, because if this was the case, I would only be able to write about middle-aged men from Worthing. That's all I could write about.
No, I think that's
I can't write about anyone who's foreign, anyone who's opposite gender. Nope.
I think, Alex, that's a little too wide. It'd be middle-aged men from Worthing who are experienced hearing aid salesmen. That would be it.
Oh, yes, of course, I forgot that bit.
And fall in love with the Ukrainian beauties on the first day of meeting them. That would be your narrow arc.
I'll drink to that, yes.
And talking about the, do you run it by your wife or any, what did you call it, genetically female minds? I did ask her a few questions. I asked a few friends questions as well, but I read a book that was, or someone was telling me about a book where it was, actually, yes, a writer called Lucy V. Hayes. She had a great book. It was called How Not to Write Female Characters, and I actually read that. Yeah. After I'd written it and thought, oh, that's fantastic. I've managed to actually not do this, because, you know, when male writers describe women, it's that the other thing they do is in derogatory terms, you know. Yes. You know, whereas they don't go on about how a man looks or what he's wearing, you know. Aidan Snow was wearing a very expensive pair of cashmere socks. Yes, that's Rebecca's got an interest. I find a man trying to get into the woman's psyche quite refreshing, same as when a woman tries to write from a man's perspective. Female authors that are writing what we call male thrillers or something, do they get it right, Alex? Well, I think they do. I think women writing men can be an awful lot more successful than men writing women, because I think their eyes are open more, you know, to how awful we as men can be. Yeah, and of course it's not just gender, is it? I mean, you've got religion, you've got age, you've got all sorts of other things when you're writing them, and you have to bring them into the category that your reader will be empathetic with, don't you? You can't write something that might be real, but not in the reader's mind, somebody they can relate to. I think we have to challenge stereotypes. We can present a stereotype, but only if we challenge it later on, you know, because that's just lazy writing, you know. Yeah, having the Russian with the vodka in one hand and cigar in the other. Mr. Bond, I will take you now. I think that's a bit silly, you know. I think we have to be a bit more nuanced, etc. You know. Yeah, less is pantomime. Yes, it was the martini shaken and stirred, or stirred and shaken. I can never remember how James Bond likes it. I want to move. Oh, before we move to something else, if somebody's beginning with you, which book should they buy? Well, I would say all of them, but however, that's not going to happen. I would suggest they start with the first Jack Tate, Total Blackout. Total Blackout, yep. That is a great book, and I think that I think I put it in a review somewhere, it's 2 or 3 years ago. You're one of the best thriller writers I've got for building tension. And that you did in Total Blackout. Thank you very much. But then if anyone's interested to see how I write a woman, then they could try Traitors. Traitors, okay, that's Traitors. We've got them up there in the chat. But if you're getting somebody for present for Christmas and got a local bookshop, go there, because we love our local bookshops. We do, yes, we do. And get an Alex shot from there. We're going to move off. That for a second, because I want you to tell us a little bit about we've got some questions coming in. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Sue. We'll cover this and then come back to those. because the World Cup at the moment is taking place in Qatar. You've talked about driving through the Emirates. Most of us don't know the difference between any of it, you know, unless we've been there. This is the Gulf, isn't it? So tell us.
It is, yeah.
You know, what is the difference between Qatar, Bahrain, where you are, and your trip through the United Arab Emirates?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, driving today through the UAE, as I said, it was probably the equivalent of driving from, say, Worthing to Wales, you know, although it wasn't that far, it was an hour and a half. Whereas you know, Bahrain's a different country, and Qatar, or as they said, Qatar, is a different country. I mean, I lived in Qatar for 3 years as well. I was there 2017 to 2020. And then we came back because of the pandemic, and I had 2 lovely years being cold on Worthing seafront, in a house, not in a bus shelter, I must admit. And then yeah, back out here again. The difference, I suppose, is that, you know, Qatar's a bit more straight-laced. You know, it's having now been in Dubai and having lived in Qatar, I can see the difference. And you know, because they have more tourists and there's more international exposure here than in Qatar, things here are a lot more progressive. You know, I'm not, obviously not everybody likes to drink or eat bacon, but in Qatar until recently there's one shop in the entire country for booze and bacon.
Okay.
So we're here, lots of places sell it, you know. But yeah, I mean, Qatar was, I found Qatar very safe. I found the people very friendly. But obviously I'm aware it does have certain restrictions based on its religion, you know.
And the religions are the same or similar throughout these small Gulf countries, are they?
They are, yes. I mean, obviously, you know, Saudi Arabia aside, which is obviously very strict. I mean, I think, yeah, Kuwait is quite strict. Qatar is not as strict as Kuwait. And then you've got Bahrain, that's probably as strict as the UAE, even Oman, which is the same as the UAE as well. It's just about interpretation, you know. For example, there are so many tourists here in the UAE that people just wear Western clothes. You know, you don't have to wear shorts of a certain length or skirts of a certain length. Where in Qatar, you had to wear things of a certain length. You know, I could get away with showing my ankles, which I did. But I couldn't get away with showing my knees, you know.
Oh, really? So you can't go shopping in Qatar with a pair of shorts on?
You can if there are long shorts or short longs, but
if they've got to cover the knees.
Not if they are the above the knee variety. You can now, but at the time I was there, which is only what, 2.5, 3 years ago, you couldn't. I mean, a friend of mine who's been there for 18 years. She said she got up late, she was tired, she went shopping. It wasn't until she walked into the shop she realised she was wearing a pair of shorts. And then it dawned on her, crikey, the World Cup has helped me wear shorts to do my shopping, you know, which to us sounds mad, you know. Sounds almost Victorian, doesn't it? There, I can see your ankles.
It's very Victorian. I remember Princess Anne getting thrown out of a wine bar in the 60s in London because she was wearing a trouser suit. So I mean, it's sort of. But the World Cup in Qatar, there's been lots of stuff about LGBTQ and all rights and workers' rights and all that sort of thing. Will it make a difference, or will that go away and then things carry on as normal?
Well, they have their official rules, the official state rules, and then they have the way they're interpreted. For example, and I'm not going to mention any companies here, but there was a certain large company there in Qatar that I kind of know quite well, and the person who ran it was a local person. And obviously there it was against the law to be you know, anything but heterosexual. And even unmarried heterosexual couples couldn't live together. But this person moved heaven and earth to let the gay partners of employees come into the country and live with them, even though it was against the law.
Right.
Now, legally, he shouldn't have been able to do it, but on a humanitarian side, he was doing it. Now, of course, there are instances where, you know, people have been discriminated against. I personally haven't seen it. I know it happens. There was a gay author who came over to a literary festival I was part of in Qatar, and he was very worried about coming over and being discriminated against. So I obviously can't speak for anybody who has experiences, because I for one haven't.
Yes.
If we're looking at workers there, deaths of immigrant workers, it's interesting, because if you have a managerial job, then you're going over there as an expat, an expatriate.
Right.
If you're doing the manual labor or the blue collar work, you're coming over as a migrant worker. And that's a very, very kind of strange situation to be in, you know.
A different administrative section that you're in there. So
it is, yes. It's almost like the difference between giving somebody a bribe or making a facilitating payment. You know,
but all the stuff about who was going over there and getting money and whether they should be doing it. I think back on the Dickensian London and the workhouses, and when we last won the World Cup, I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, I think homosexuality was illegal here in Britain back in those days. So is it, because you've lived in these places for a long time, is it a matter of timing and that slowly things are progressing, and they're monarchies, aren't they? So they're not democracies. Yeah. Or is it a matter of a sort of dictatorship clamping down and making sure everything stays the same for their advantage?
I think in the past it has been the powers that be clamping down. Officially, I do think unofficially things are changing, and I think it really is exposure to the Western world, you know. But let's not forget, I mean, you know, Russia, they have very similar views on, you know, LGBT plus, LGBTQ plus, like the Middle East have. So you know, they're very set in their ways as well. So it's not just the Middle East. I mean, both countries, both regions can be equally as vile.
You said a book in Dubai, didn't you?
Yes, yes. Oh, here's the cover.
Cold Black, that's Aidan Tate, is it, or is it
Aidan Snow?
Yeah, Aidan Snow or Jack Tate?
yeah, Aidan Tate could be a title, couldn't it? Yeah, Aidan Snow is the second Aidan Snow book, and there is that's set partly in Saudi Arabia, partly in Bahrain, and partly in UAE, as well as being in Ukraine. And there's a shootout at Atlantis Hotel on the Palm, and. Now I know you're not meant to write.
Is that the hotel that looks like a sail of a yacht?
No, that's the Burj Al Arab.
Oh, okay.
That's a 7-star one. I know what you mean. It's a 7-star one. No, the man-made island, the palm that goes out. They've got a hotel on the end called the Atlantis, and I wrote a scene in there, and then I went on holiday there about 2 years later, and I'm glad the book obviously hadn't sold much in the UAE, because I think you're not allowed to write about the UAE, etc., in a certain light. Yeah. And there I had terrorists running away and being shot at in this hotel. I was also there 2 weeks ago as well, and now I'm like, how dare you have not read my book? You mean you're not chucking me out? So that was. But that's the thing, you see, you know, we in the UK we can write about anyone, the monarchy, whatever, but you know, in certain countries you write about the people in charge. And
except they do have literary festivals across there.
They do, yeah.
So they're obviously very careful about who they pick. Have you been asked to one?
I was part of a literary festival in Qatar actually 3 years ago, this last week. That was an Indian literary festival. That was the Jaipur literary festival, and that was exciting. But yes, there is an Emirates literary festival. It's happening, I believe, in late February. I'm going to go to that. I won't be part of it this year. This time, I'll hopefully get involved next time. Yeah, because they've already decided who's going to be involved. I've arrived a bit too late to get involved with that.
So maybe you'll have won another prize by then. Rebecca Stack has come back to us about the gender fluidity of writing perspectives. I like to think my sons learned something about women's thinking from their mothers and how they bring them up and teach them values. Rebecca's son is 25. Sutani has a question for you. You've got 1 minute to answer it. Who does Alex enjoy reading?
Okay, well, there are quite a few authors I like. The problem is, because I know so many of these people personally now, if I don't mention a particular author, they'll say, why didn't you mention my name, you swine?
Oh, no, you mentioned it. We're podcasting now, Alex, so this will go out to millions. Tell us
okay,
all.
well, I mean, I read a very good book, actually. It was based on these islands that were in between America and Alaska and the USA, and written by a guy called Humphrey Hawksley. That was a fantastic read. I recommend that one.
That's your
Man on Ice
recommendation.
No, I read widely in the thriller genre. I have to keep up, to make sure I'm not writing someone else's story.
Yes, that's good. Rebecca Stack says, this is fascinating. I think Rebecca's talking about your wonderful, vivid descriptions you gave us about the Gulf states and everything. I want you to stay right there whilst I tell our audience what is coming up. And we have next Thursday another Goldster expansion. Had I mentioned we are now doing podcasts, so welcome all the podcast listeners to this show with Alex Shaw. And on December 22nd, I'm back with Sir Muir Gray, who's a Goldster superstar and the author of 2 hilarious and insightful books, aptly named Sod 60, that's for people that turn 60, and Sod It, Sod 70. And I don't know, I'll ask him if he's doing a Sod 81. I'm not sure how old he is. And he's got a great expertise on ignoring the passing years and keep dancing on. And this is going to be an in-person live event at Riverstone, Fulham in London. So we're going to do it live. We're going to stream it all over the world and goodness knows what. So tune into that. The next day, Lucinda is with Jeremy Seal, and this looks great. Nicholas, the epic journey from Saint to Santa Claus, and St. Nicholas, that is one of our most influential saints. And December 29th, I am with the ebullient and avuncular chair of the Crime Writers Association, Maxim Jakubowski, whose works include The Return of Sherlock Holmes, which I have here, The Return of Sherlock Holmes, and the Mammoth Book of Erotica, which I've got back there, but I'm not going to show you. He must be living the dream, that man. And I never thought I'd say erotica and Sherlock Holmes in one sentence. So join us then on December the 29th. And then we have our book of the month, which is Truman Capote's Breakfast at Tiffany's, a classic with a legendary movie starring Audrey Hepburn. It's a thin read. And it came to us because one of our guests wanted to know how to get a 16-year-old to read. And I said, watch a great movie. It's a wonderful movie, and read the book because it's thin. And we're going to discuss that on New Year's Eve. And when I was talking to you before the show, Alex, you said you shop a lot at Tiffany's. Is that right?
It has been my go-to store for Christmas and anniversary and birthday presents for my wife, but I've never experienced a breakfast at Tiffany's.
But in Breakfast at Tiffany's, there's a sort of tranquility about the store, and whenever she feels anxious and flustered, she goes there and calms down. Would you say that is correct?
I think once I've bought the bracelets or necklaces, I do feel less flustered and more calm. Yes.
And tell us, Maxine Jakubowski, you are a great, you do anthologies as well, don't you? With other thriller writers.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. How does that work?
I've been in a couple that have been published by publishers. One was called Noirville by Fahrenheit Press. Another one was by Loom Books, which was Capital Crimes, which was crime writing, which I also edited that one as well. But I started doing anthologies to try to, there was myself and a group of 6 authors, and we wanted to try to kind of club together to see if we could get published. And so we put the anthology together, and within about 2 years, all of us got publishing deals. I don't know if that was just,
so I don't think it was contributed as an unpublished author, and then because of your peer group around you, you got a deal. Is that right?
I'd like to say yes, but I think it's probably luck. I think it was luck that we all got the publishing deals, but it's nice to look back on because that was kind of aim, yes. And it happened. So that's nice. The
international thriller writers that I know you're involved with as well, when they first started, they published an anthology with people like Lee Child and Peter James and that, and because it did so well, they didn't have to charge a subscription to join.
That is fantastic. I mean, I did get Peter James to give me a blurb for the anthology that we did for the ITW. But yeah, I mean, to be in an anthology with those people is fantastic. I mean, their anthologies sell, unlike mine.
So what should I ask Maxim Jakubowski to embarrass him the most about Sherlock Holmes and the Book of Erotica?
Something about the pint, perhaps. I don't know.
All right. And I'm going to leave us on that. That's it. The day here has not warmed up, although it might have done a bit, but time's winged chariot is upon us. The great Alex Shaw. You find him on www.alexwshaw.co.uk and order, if you like his books, order if you can from your local bookshop. Thank you, Alex, and thank you for all of your fearless contributions. Rebecca says, hiding knees, exclamation mark. Lovely, entertaining interview. Thanks to you both. Thank you for that, Rebecca, and to all the others who contributed and asked questions. Until Thursday, when I'm, yes, on Zoom and live with the athletic and expert Sir Muir Gray at the Riverstone Fulham Theatre. There's an adventure for us. Stay involved, stay curious, stay generous, stay safe, and of course, stay Goldster. If you Google Goldster podcast, you'll be able to get the first of the podcasts, which we launched this week, Goldster podcasts. Thank you, Alex. Have a great season, as they say out there in the sun. You've been a great guest. Bye.
Thank you. Shukran. Thank you very much for having me and for listening.
Lovely. Bye, Alex. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.